concerns a request by a juror to be excused due to financial hardship. And it's the same juror who had an issue. How do you propose that I respond to this note?
Well, Judge, this is the juror that has already technically been removed from the jury. He's not aware of it. We did note that he did not indicate any hardship when we did the general questioning. My concern, it's more of a his behavior and attitude has definitely not been the most respectful towards the proceedings in this particular case. And to a certain extent, you hate to reward that kind of behavior. That being said, the state would leave it in the court's discretion as to how we think is best to proceed. And just, you hate to reward behavior where it appears that someone is purposely attempting to get out of jury service.
How do you feel like it would infect the rest of the jury?
Well, it could. I mean, it could definitely. And other jurors may say, hey, if I act this way, and I have financial hardship, or I don't want to be here anymore, maybe if I act this way, maybe I can get off too. And that's the other concern.
My concern is that he infects the jury pool and just, either his attitude means that, he speaks poorly of us all and poisons the jury against the whole thing. That's my concern if we leave it. But I would defer to the court.
Well, there are two concerns. Right? There is that, and then the opposite, which has been referenced here. I don't know what it is. Technically an opposite, but it's a different concern, and also a real concern. I'm going to deny the request.
And can you please state and spell your name?
Amanda Harrill, AMANDAHARRILL.
And Ms. Harrill, how do you know Millie Harrill?
She's my daughter.
And how did she come to be your daughter?
I became a foster parent in August of 15, and through the course of the time, her younger sisters were placed with me, and then a little bit more time came, then we were blessed to have her come with us.
And why did you become a foster parent?
It just kind of presented itself. I had learned through a friend more about fostering, and I was married. I didn't have any kids, and the more I thought about it, I had a loving home to offer, and I had a flexible job that gave me the freedom to be able to provide what was needed, and then it just kind of took off from there.
And before Millie's younger sisters, how many foster children did you have?
None.
They were your first?
My first and only.
Now, how old was Millie when she first came to live with you?
6.
And how old was Millie's younger sisters when they came to live with you?
Carly was just shy of a month, and Hannah was 7 weeks, I believe.
When was the first time you met Millie?
I had met Millie, I don't remember ever seeing her at any court hearings, but I believe the first time I ever met her was when our transporter for visitations, a few times, due to scheduling changes, she would pick Millie up before she would come to get Carly, and I had the opportunity just to briefly meet her in the backseat of the car as I was buckling Carly.
When you say visitations, what kind of visitations were taking place?
The girls had visitations with either Tessa, or the sisters. Eventually we got to where we had, sibling visits, and a transporter would pick up Carly from me and then take her to wherever the visits were taking place.
And was the transporter someone employed by DFACS?
I think it was an outside company that DFACS employs to do their transporting, and I think they do home studies and stuff as well.
Now, how did you learn of Laila's death?
The night that Laila died, I received a call. I believe it was from a caseworker from Henry County or someone from DFACS requesting the number to my foster agency's emergency intake line. During that call, they did say that Carly's sister, had tragically passed away, and that they were looking for possibly emergency placement of Millie. They asked if I would take her, and I said yes. And then that was the end of it. Yeah.
At the time of that phone call, had you met Millie those few times with the transporter?
Yes. Oh, no. No, I had not.
No. Okay. So at the time of that phone call, you had not met Millie
No.
at all?
No, Carly had only been with me maybe 5 weeks.
And after those first few brief interactions with the transporter, when is the next time you met Millie?
I might have seen her in court, but I don't think so. In July of 17, we visit schedules kind of changed, and we moved the visit. At this point, it was a sibling visit, and we moved the location to my house. And then so Millie started coming to visitations at my house.
So what happened between the phone call you got on November 17, 2015, asking you if you would take Millie, and July 2017?
I asked that a lot too. When I agreed, it was obviously things were chaos. It was late at night. I didn't hear back from them. And so, of course, I am frantically trying to figure out what's about to happen, and am I now gonna, am I making changes for, room for a 4-year-old? And as I waited, and things kind of changed, and then all of a sudden DFACS came back and had a concern because I had a pool, I had dogs, and they wanted those things addressed. So then my dogs were cleared and everything was fine, and then I had to add an additional fence to the pool. And by the time I was able to get that taken care of, Millie had already been placed in another home, so they said she's going to stay where she is.
And how did it come about that after July of 2017, Millie actually ended up with you after being placed somewhere else?
My understanding is she went to a couple different places in between. A couple phone calls I got asking if she could come, live with us. I always said yes when I got that phone call. And then sibling visits started at our house. And, DFACS had kind of started talking about permanent placements and what that was going to look like, and wanting the sisters together. And then she came to visit. We took her on a family vacation with us. And at that point, she was placed with Peggy Banks. And when we got back from our Thanksgiving vacation to the beach, when I was transitioning Millie back to Peggy, she mentioned that she felt that Christmas or winter break would be a good time for Millie to transition into my home.
And step back a little. You went on a family vacation with the 3 girls in
Yes.
November of 2017?
Yes, we invited Millie to go with us,
And at that time, where was Millie living?
with Peggy Banks.
And whose idea was it at that time for Millie to transition to live in your home?
I wanted her the entire time, but it wasn't until there was Peggy was wanting her to stay with her, but then she mentioned it. She knew that obviously I was open to it and wanted that to happen, but then she had changed her mind and thought that that was what was best for Millie.
When did Millie officially move into your home?
She officially moved in on December 27th of 17.
And did you spend that Christmas with Millie?
I did. Christmas is very big to our family, so I wanted to make sure she was with us.
And after December 27 of 2017, was Millie permanently with you up until
Yes.
this time?
Yes.
And were you present for the hearing regarding the termination of Tessa's parental rights and
I was.
the father's?
Mhm.
And what was that date?
June 8th
Of what year?
of 18.
And what was the date that Millie and her sisters were officially adopted?
3/18/19.
at the time that Millie began to live with you in December of 2017, how old was she?
6.
And at that time, what, if anything, did you know about Millie's first 6 years of her life?
I didn't know a lot of information. I knew she had been in several different places. Obviously, I had heard that she was in the home where her sister passed away, that, there was, potentially, some issues that she may have been through, just trauma in general from all of the moving, things that she had experienced and been a part of, but that was about it.
Did you know anything about Millie's medical history prior to her coming to stay with you?
Mm-hmm.
And how come you didn't have any of her medical history?
Well, I'm not actually, privy to that information until she's technically placed in my home. But even when she was placed with me, any medical information was hard to get. Anything when her time in Henry County, I was just told that no one could access that information, so they had nothing to give to me. But that when she was adopted, then I would have all medical records.
And at this time, have you been able to get all of Millie's medical records?
No, I have very spotty records.
And were you at the time that you adopted or started fostering Millie, were you able to get any of the DFACS records?
No.
Did you know Tessa Daniel prior to fostering Millie and her sisters?
No.
Did you know Millie or her sister's biological fathers prior to fostering Millie and her sisters?
No.
And did you know Peggy Banks prior to fostering Millie?
No.
Since fostering Millie and then adopting Millie, have you met Tessa Banks?
Briefly,
Tessa Daniel.
yes, briefly in court. We have had email conversations.
And since fostering and adopting Millie, have you had conversations with Peggy Banks?
Yes.
Now, when Millie first came to live with you, what kind of child was she?
Sweet, energetic. She had trust issues. She had a very hard time just trusting almost anything. I think rightfully so. She loved being with her sisters and was great to, help take care of them, per se. She would have some attention-seeking behaviors. I think coming now all of a sudden being back in the oldest of 2 and, just wanting to have my attention, at times. And as I think a typical 6-year-old will do, they'll get it any way they can get it.
And what kind of things would she do to get your behavior?
She would just, wouldn't maybe do something when I asked her to do it, or if I would tell her to go brush her teeth or get in the shower or, pick up her clothes or her toys. Or she would tell me she did do those things, and then I would, of course, come to find the clothes still on the floor or her toothbrush was dry, things like that.
Now, what does Millie do, or how does she act when she gets nervous?
She gets this kind of funnier, giggle, laugh. She tends to make grand gestures when she's lying, and she talks. She either goes really quiet or she tries to overtalk.
So you've seen Millie do a giggle or a laugh when she gets nervous?
Yes.
Now, how often have you and Millie talked about the death of her sister Laila, as well as Millie's experiences at the Rosenbaums?
Very rarely. It's definitely something that she does not want to talk about. I don't push the issue. We talk about Laila all the time. But we just don't talk about her experiences.
When you talk about Laila, what kind of things are you talking about?
She'll tell me about things that Laila liked to do, what she was like, and she'll just tell stories of they would read, she would read a book, to Laila, those kind of things.
And how come Millie doesn't like talking about her experience at the Rosenbaums.
I would object. That's a question that can't be answered by a third party. Why Millie wouldn't do something or wouldn't feel a certain way. That's asking for speculation.
The witness may have firsthand knowledge from Millie.
I'll sustain the objection.
Now, has Millie ever told you anything about what happened to her while living at the Rosenbaums?
She has made a couple brief statements, throughout the course of our time together.
Now, how would these statements begin? How would they come up?
Very, very random. Looking back, I still can't ever think about how it would come up. We may just be in the car and she would just make a statement, or we might be talking about something, that we want for dinner, and then she'll go into why she doesn't want something. But then she makes a statement and moves on.
Have you ever asked her directly about what happened at the Rosenbaums?
No.
And when Millie would make these statements, would you ask her questions?
No.
What exactly has Millie told you about what happened to her at the Rosenbaums?
She's, I think, mentioned 4 different things that had happened. One of them being that she and Laila would get in trouble if they fell asleep in the car, and they would receive spankings if they would get in trouble and or receive spankings if they ever fell asleep in the car.
Did she tell you anything else?
She said at one time she wasn't doing something fast enough, so Jennifer twisted her ankle and sat on her.
And when she told you this, did you ask her any more questions?
I didn't, because I have no information as to what happened, and I mean, never having, a child this age, especially a child of trauma, I didn't want to ever make it worse. I didn't want to make her talk about something, because when she would make these statements, it was a one and done. She would say it, and before she could finish that sentence, she had already changed the subject, and it was clear she did not want to talk about it.
And what was the 4th thing that she told you about being
Okay, spankings. But she had said at one point that she was forced to eat mashed potatoes until she vomited, and then was forced to eat the vomit.
And how did that statement come up?
We were talking about things, always trying to come up with different things to have for dinner. Becomes challenging that you have 3 kids that will eat. So I'm always trying to get them to tell me things that they like, because if they tell me they like it, then they can't sit at the table and tell me they don't. And so we talked about potatoes, and did she like potatoes of any kind? And she said no.
And that's when this topic of mashed potatoes came up? Now, other than what Millie has told you, do you know anything else about how Millie was injured at the Rosenbaums?
No.
And other than what Millie has told you, do you know anything else about Laila's death?
Obviously when this first happened, I definitely followed along any media coverage, any, articles in the newspaper, anything that was published, when it happened.
Have you ever told Millie about what you've learned in the media?
No.
Now, you've been in the courtroom for most of this trial, and at any point have you gone home and told Millie about what you've heard in court?
No.
Have you ever gone home and questioned Millie about things that were said in court?
No. One thing, I do want to say one thing. We did talk about procedural. She would ask what happened, and I would be like, we selected a jury today, or we listened to people talk, but never anything that was said. But we did talk about picking jury.
And why have you been in the courtroom for most of the trial?
Because I'm her mother.
And have you been able to learn some information about Millie's past since being in the courtroom?
Mm-hmm.
And is that important to you?
Very. Okay. It's hard to not know what your child's been through.
Now, at the time that Millie came to live with you, was she seeing a therapist named Ann McCullough?
She was.
And when Millie came to live with you, did you continue to take her to see Ann?
I did.
And was there a time when you, Millie, and Millie's great-grandmother, Peggy Banks, met with Miss McCullough?
We did.
And how did that meeting come about?
In just kind of passing, I felt that Millie may see Peggy and I, having kind of a loyalty issue, and I thought that if she could see Peggy and I together as a united front, wanting nothing but the best for her, that might help her, just feel better, just when she gets uneven about things and the transition.
And during that meeting, did you go through Millie's different placements with her?
Yes, because I had no, or concrete knowledge of her background.
And was Peggy Banks the one that kind of gave you that information?
She did. Mm-hmm.
And during that meeting, did you ever discuss or Millie ever talk about her time at the Rosenbaums?
That wasn't talked about in the sessions that I was part of, other than their place in the timeline.
Why did, at some point did Millie stop seeing Ann McCullough?
Yes. Ann's office is in McDonough. We live in Noonan. So it just wasn't, after a while, it just became troublesome to drive that far, each and every week when I could find something closer.
And how far was the drive from your place to Ann's?
I think it was about an hour. We would come from different places from school or whatnot, but I think it was roughly an hour.
And you would be doing that about once a week?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if Millie told Ann about anything about the death of her sister?
I believe she did, yes.
But you don't, no one is.
I don't know any specifics as to what was said.
Do you know what, if anything, Millie told Ann about herself living with the Rosenbaums, her experience?
I know that she did, but I don't know the specifics as to what she said.
When did Millie stop seeing Ann?
I believe it was in March of 18.
And after March of 2018, did Millie see another therapist?
A couple months later, we started up with one closer to home.
So that would be approximately May of 2018?
I believe we started in July of 18.
And what was the reason that you took Millie to see Donna, the other therapist?
Honestly, she had been, in counseling for, so long. What little I did hear about what she had been through, I felt anyone would need continued counseling and therapy. And so I felt it was best to continue what she had already been
And
doing.
at that time, were you also seeking some guidance or help in how to parent a 6-year-old?
Yes. My situation's a little bit more unique. I didn't have any children of my own before I started fostering, so I was learning day by day as the little ones were getting older. And then when Millie came, I had never parented a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6-year-old, let alone a child with trauma in her history, that I wanted to make sure that I was doing it right, and I wasn't, I don't think any parent knows what they're doing, but I wanted to make sure I was overly cautious that I wasn't going to cause her any trauma or anything like that.
And how often would Millie see Donna?
I would say on average 3 times a month. Schedules would come up and, but I would say on average 3 times.
And what, if any, concerns did you bring to Donna's attention?
Similar to the ones I, mentioned before, attention-seeking behaviors, getting into, Millie telling lies and just, why not brush your teeth? How do I, turn this around so we can, just get to doing things maybe the first or second time I ask her to do it versus the 5th or 6th.
And was Donna able to teach you some techniques on how to handle or parent a 6-year-old?
Yeah, she would always have, ideas for whatever. Because I would just ask, almost any time she came, I would have some sort of scenario that I'd be like, what do you think?
So she came, where did the sessions take place?
She would come to the house. She came to our house.
Now, was there a time that Millie discussed Laila's death at school?
Yes,
And was that brought to your attention?
it was.
And was this discussion brought to Donna's attention?
It was.
And how come you brought it to Donna's attention?
Because Millie doesn't talk about what happens. So any time she does, I feel the door is open and I want to know, is there a reason, was there a trigger that brought her that wanted to talk about it? What caused it? And if she wanted to talk about it now, I wanted to make sure she had the avenues to do it in the best way for her.
Did you talk to Millie about that conversation she had at school about Laila's death?
I did.
And was Millie able to tell you why she discussed Laila's death?
It started with a prayer request at school that morning, and there was, some of her classmates were sharing, a passing of a grandparent or a sick family member, and I think she wanted to participate in the conversation.
And why was this conversation concerning to you?
It's very heavy information for children. I was, concerned that Millie was now wanting to talk about it, but unfortunately, it wasn't with appropriate people.
And what exactly did Millie say to her classmates?
She told them that her sister was killed. I think that it kind of had come up in multiple times throughout the day. So I may not have the order of what was said and when, but I was told that she had said that her sister was killed. Her sister had been choked, at one point choked on chicken, that I believe she said organs had been split in two, or cut in half, maybe.
Cut in half, okay. And when you first approached Millie about what she had told her classmates, did she deny that she had said it?
Yes.
And at that point, did you have a conversation with her about being honest with you?
Yes.
And at that point, at some point, did she eventually tell you?
Eventually. Mm-hmm.
And during that conversation, well, let me ask you this. Is Millie, in your experience, able to distinguish what she's heard and what she's personally observed with her own eyes?
I think so.
You have to get out of objective speculation and asking for a conclusion she can't possibly know what hears or observes.
As based on her personal knowledge.
We'll allow this.
Was Millie able to tell you how she knew the information that she told you about her sister's death?
When it kind of came down to it, she was like, well, I think I heard that.
And as of today's date, does Millie still continue to see Donna?
Yes, she does.
And do you at all know Jennifer Rosenbaum?
No, I do not.
And do you at all know Joseph Rosenbaum?
No.
Do you have any relationship with any of Millie or her other sister's family members?
No.
Thank you. No more questions.
Good morning, Ms. Harrill. I just have a number of questions for you. My name is Corrine Moe. You've been sitting in the courtroom since the beginning of trial, haven't you?
I have.
So you've heard what all the witnesses have said. You've seen all the pictures. You have listened to all. You have seen all the exhibits that have been
Yes.
filed. And it's true, isn't it, that when you excuse me just a second. Staring me in the face. You had an occasion with Millie where Hannah, and Hannah is Merci, isn't it?
Yes.
That was her name by her biological mother was Merci.
Yes,
And she's now Hannah.
she is.
There was a time where you were exposed to the fact that Hannah fell down or hurt herself, was pushed, and had some bruising, and that Millie was the one who had pushed her, correct?
I don't remember that specifically.
You don't remember ever reporting to DFACS that Hannah had gotten hurt, and none of the girls would tell you how it happened. She kept.
Oh, okay, I know, yes.
So that did happen?
Yes.
Okay. And so none of the girls would tell you what happened, including Millie, and
In the beginning.
in the beginning, and then ultimately she fessed up to the fact that she had lied.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And you've had lots of diaper rashes with the girls that you have now, the two younger ones, sisters of Millie.
Carly
Yes.
had several diaper rashes.
Okay. With regards to Donna Wazorek, it's fair to say, isn't it, that basically she was brought into the picture to help Millie prepare for trial?
No.
No.
That is something that would have been discussed, but that's not the reason.
So that was not one of the reasons?
No.
And isn't it true that Donna Wazorek has attempted to prepare her for trial?
Depends on what you mean by prepare. They have talked about it, that she needs to get up here and be honest.
And has been a problem for Millie all along, not just while you've had her, correct?
As far as lying?
Yes.
I would say about little things. Brushing her hair.
But you don't know her history other than the time she has been with you, correct?
I do not know.
No. And it's fair to say that great-grandma has a great deal of influence on Millie, correct?
I would say while she was living with her.
And Millie and her great-grandmother would have conversations, isn't that correct?
I'm not privy to the conversations they had.
But you were privy to the results of those conversations, weren't you? You were privy to the fact that you're...
If she wasn't aware of the conversation, she couldn't be privy to the results.
Well, the results of the conversations with Millie, with her grandmother, how Millie acted when she was back home.
That's what you're getting to?
Yes, I'll rephrase.
Okay, thank you.
Your daughter Millie had problems with lying.
Yes.
You say about little things.
Little things,
Lying.
yes.
She also had a problem with doing what her grandmother told her she could do and you told her she could not do, correct?
Can you give me an example?
I know, I can't give you an example. I'm asking you a question. Isn't it true that her grandmother would tell her things that you then would object to?
Oh, yes. I thought you meant telling her she could do something and I was telling her she couldn't do something.
You had issues with what was going on with her grandmother.
Yes, there was a few things I had issues with.
And in fact, those were discussed with Donna Wazorek, and Donna Wazorek being the therapist. And there were requests that when Millie was with her great-grandmother or her mother during the visitation period with her mother, that they have appropriate conversations, that they not engage in inappropriate conversations.
Well, I can't, are you saying when she visitations with Tessa?
Yes.
Millie did not have any visitations once she moved in with me, so I
You
can't
don't
say
know
to
about
that.
that.
But no, I definitely, asked Peggy to have, be mindful of when Millie was around and what was said in front of her.
And in fact, she was telling things about both the Rosenbaums and Millie and Layla's family.
I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure.
Okay. What was it that you were seeing that caused you to tell Peggy that you did not want her having these conversations with her?
One of them was saying that the only reason I wanted Millie to come and live with me was so the 2 younger sisters would stay with me.
And that you knew to be a lie?
It was, because I said yes, you know, from the night Laila died, and several times after that for Millie to come live with us.
So to your knowledge, if Peggy did in fact tell her that, she lied?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can't say that Peggy was lying, because I don't know if she knew until much later into this process, and Millie was living with me, that I had mentioned all the times that I wanted Millie to come be with us. And she seemed surprised. So I don't know when she said those things. I just know that I had a problem with her saying that to Millie.
One of the treatment goals was to significantly reduce the frequency or eliminate lying altogether, wasn't it?
No parent wants their child to lie. So yes, that was absolutely a goal.
Yes.
Yes.
Is the answer.
Yes.
Yes. And she was getting in trouble at school for lying, correct?
Once, twice maybe?
She was getting in trouble at school. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Now, you would hear what she had to say to Donna Wazorek.
Not all the time. No, I was there for some sessions, and other sessions they were not.
But you were there for some sessions.
Some of them, yes.
And it's true that one day you felt she made some statements that caused you to follow Donna Wazorek out the door and tell her that you had concerns that some of the memories Millie was having were not true, were not correct.
I remember saying that I was under the impression something different had happened. But again, I had no knowledge of specifically what happened. So every time the sessions were over, I went outside with Donna to recount.
Okay, well, I'm asking you a question, a very specific question. Did you go outside and say to Donna Wazorek that you were concerned the memories Millie was speaking about were not true? Did you on that one day do that?
I don't remember specifically that day, but it is possible, yes.
It's possible.
Yes, absolutely.
There also were instances that Donna and you discussed where you felt that she made up her own past experiences, correct?
Yes.
And you don't know really how she was at age 3 or 4. You just
No.
know her from 6. Mm-hmm. So you don't know what her history was for lying back then.
No, I do not.
either. I'm going to show you what I've marked as Defendant's Exhibit 15 and ask you if you can identify this.
Yes, that is a picture of Carly and Millie at the girls' birthday party at my house for Hannah and Carly.
Is this an accurate picture of Millie at what age?
That would have been, that was the girl's first and second birthday, so she would have been 6.
So who would she have been living with at the time?
Peggy Banks.
Okay. These bruises we see on her legs, did you question anybody about them?
No.
Did you report them to DFACS?
No.
Thank you very much on this picture. I'm going to show you Defendants 14 and see if you can identify that for us.
That is a picture in one of her classmates, of Millie and one of her classmates.
Is this a bump on her head?
No.
It's not.
No.
You didn't report that to anyone?
No. And she was adopted at them, so I don't need to report it to anyone if there was a bump.
Okay, but if there was a bump, isn't it true that what we're seeing is in fact the highlight caused by the light?
Well, I'm not sure I don't see anything on there, so I'm not sure.
The light colored, if I may.
Yes. I'm not sure that's me.
This right here is caused by the light, isn't it?
Okay.
This is the light bouncing off of her, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
I have nothing further. Oh, one last question. Can you identify this picture for us?
Yes, that is Hannah and a family friend.
And Hannah is, again, just for the record, the child that was named Mercy,
Yes.
correct? At this time, Your Honor, I would tender into evidence Defendant's Exhibit 16.
Your Honor, student objects to relevancy. And
And
it's
then-
not a child at issue in this case.
And family friend.
Yes.
Your Honor, this goes to, again, to lineage and to show certainly some of the features of the child that are similar to the features in Laila. And just want to show them at the same age as Laila.
Well, the relevance standard is not high. I'll admit it, what it's worth.
Thank you, Your Honor. What age, if I may, Your Honor, if you're admitting Defendant 16,
May I?
may I publish?
You may.
Thank you. What age is this picture of Hannah?
I don't remember specifically when it was taken. I would say maybe a little less than a year.
A little less than a year.
Maybe, somewhere right around her first birthday.
And she looks different now, doesn't she?
She's older.
And her face has grown out. She's grown out of the baby fat in her face.
Well, she still has chubby cheeks.
But she doesn't have cheeks that look like this right now, do they?
It might be slightly different.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Based on your experience with now parenting young children, do young children sometimes lie?
Yes.
And when Millie would tell you lies, those would be about little things, as you said.
Yes.
And your concerns regarding some of the things that either Millie said, that's not necessarily the same thing as them being untrue, is it?
Yes.
Now, Millie got in trouble, I believe you indicated maybe 2 times for lying at school. What grade is Millie in now?
She'll be going into second grade.
Second grade. Second or third?
No, she's going into second grade.
Second. So she's been in school kindergarten, first grade, second grade,
She's going into second grade.
and she's got in trouble twice for lying?
Yes, specifically.
And what were those?
The only one that I remember specifically was something to do with classwork, and she was supposed to be going and doing classwork. She grabbed one of the classroom iPads and was in with another group that she was supposed to be. She was supposed to be in a different group, and she was saying that she didn't know that she was supposed to be in that group, in a different group than where she was. And so the teacher was like, I know I told you, so you do know. And she like,
The teacher said that's when he was.
Sustained.
So in all those 3 years, that was the lie she got in
the
trouble
ones that
for.
that come to mind, yeah.
And when Millie pushed Hannah, did Hannah have any injuries?
She might have had a bump.
Anything that you had to take her to the hospital for?
No.
Do the siblings sometimes fight?
Yes.
Put on the overhead what's been marked as State's Exhibit 78. Did Millie ever come back from Peggy Banks's home with that type of bruise?
No.
If you had seen that type of bruise on Millie when she came home from Peggy Banks's, would you have taken her to the hospital?
Yes.
Would you have made a report?
Yes.
Would you have been concerned?
Yes.
And I'll show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 80. Did Millie ever come from Peggy Banks with injuries like that?
No.
Has Millie ever had a type of injury like that in your care?
No.
If you had ever seen an injury like that on Millie or any of your other children, would you have been concerned?
Absolutely.
Would you have made a report?
Absolutely.
Would you have taken them to the hospital?
Absolutely.
Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.